Hi, I'm Navid Ansari, and in this video, we're gonna talk about enhanced input action or enhanced input, right? This is a new thing in Unreal Engine, and it can get a little bit confusing, but I will show you everything in here so you will see that it's a lot better than the old system. So without any further ado, let's begin. So first of all, in here, I have this pawn, right? It's just a pawn. Let me show you. You can see it's just pawn. So if I run our game, you can see nothing is happening. It's just camera with the mesh, right? So the old way was that we go to edit, we go to project setting, and we did go to input. And in this input, we define some action mapping, access mapping, and all of that. But no, it's changed to enhance input actions. So let's just learn that how it works. So first thing to do, let's just create a new folder. I want to call it inputs. Maybe you should do that as well. In here, first thing to do, right click in here, go to inputs, and in this input, two important thing is this input action and input mapping context. So first thing, go and create an input action. And in this input action, I want to call it IA. For input action, I want to call it move, right? So double click on it to open it, and you can see it is very simple things. First of all, we can define a description for this. This is for moving of our character, right? Or whatever you want to put in there. Next, consume input. Do you want to get any input in here or not? Default it is true, and we need that, right? Trigger when paused is for when we pause our game, should these IA move works or not, because we don't want to move when we are in a pause state. We leave it as false. So next important thing is the value type. Do you want it to be boolean, just a boolean, pressed or not pressed? Or do you want to be access 1D? It's exactly like access mapping in the old way, right? Access 1D. But the beautiful thing about this new system is access 2D and access 3D, right? So let's just start with digital boolean, right? Just true or false. So no, just with that, with the boolean. Let's just save this. Next thing that we should do in here, we should right click, go to input and create input mapping context. Okay, click on it, input mapping context, IMC. And I want to call it default or whatever you want to call it. Double click on it to open it, and in here you can see there is nothing in there. First thing, I want to create a mapping for our IA move that we just create. Click on this plus, expand it, and in here choose your input action, right? Click on it. So in this move, whenever we hit W, for example, it will give us 1, because in here we choose digital boolean in here. So whenever we hit W, it will give us 1. So just with that, let's just save everything, go to our blueprint. So in here, first thing to do, we should tell Unreal Engine that this IMC we want to use, it's all input actions, right? So we should add it to our blueprint so it knows that it should use that, right? So first thing to do in here, we should get controller. So you should do that every time that you want to add another IMC. You can have multiple, right? I will explain that more. Next thing to do, we should cast this to player controller, right? So after we cast this, we can get enhance input local player system or subsystem, right? And with that, we can add our mapping context. Okay, it needs execution pin, so let's just give it that. And the mapping context is this, the one that we create, right? Just choose that, and that's all you need to do in here. You can see there is a priority that I will talk about. Don't worry about it. Just with this, we can access this IA move. So in this IA move, that is digital boolean, whenever we hit W, it should give us true or 1, right? So no, Let's just right click in here and search for IA move, right? So in this IA move, it's not like before that has press, release, and all of that, right? So let me explain everything in here. First of all, you should see that the action value in here is just a boolean. Why? Because IA move, we decide that it is a boolean, right? So just bear in mind for this. Next thing is this triggered, okay? So this triggered will happen 60 times per second if your game is 60 FPS, right? So as long that this IA move is happening, this trigger will happen with it. This IA move have an start and have a completed. And when this completed executed, this trigger won't happen anymore. So let me show you for the start. At this case, because we have a boolean, we have digital boolean for this IA move, this start it's like a pressed, and this complete it's like released, right? So let's just see how it works. If I just use this triggered, what will happen? Let's just print something, print a string, okay? So this triggered will be happening when we are holding this W for in this case, and it will happen 60 times per second until we release this W, right? So let us see that. The action value, it is just a boolean, so let's just connect it here to see it give us a true and false. Compile and run, and now if I hit W in here, you can see it's just saying true, right? If we disconnect this execution pin and connect the started, it will print true just once. So let's just compile and run, hit W, you can see it's just writing true, nothing more, right? Until you release W, this trigger will happen 60 times per second. But this started will happen once because the pressed is happening once. Next, incomplete. So what I want to do, I want to delete this, and in here I want to say started, okay? And in this incomplete, again I want to use another print string in here and say completed, okay? So no, just with that, if we compile and run our game, hit W, it says started. If you release it, it says completed. So now you know that trigger will happen between when a start is happening until the completed is happened. And it will give us an action value that is just a boolean because we decide that it is a boolean. So now with that, let's just delete this. I want to talk about other options for this value type. I want to change this to axis 1D, okay? Axis 1D. Now if we save this and go to our character, now you can see the action value in here is a float now. It's not a boolean type anymore because we changed this value type from boolean to float or axis 1D, right? So now if I again print an string in here and print this action value to here, right? We can compile and run, and if we hit W, you can see it print 1, and if you release it, it won't print 1 anymore, right? And it's not just that. Let's just delete this. If I change this value type to, for example, axis 2D, that will give us a vector 2D, let's just save it and see. Now you can see the action value now has X and Y. It is a vector 2D. And if we want to show that here, what will happen if we hit W on our keyboard, it will change the value of X to 1 and the Y is 0, right? So you can see. And again, if we go here and change this axis 2D to access 3D, what will happen? Now you can see the action value now is vector 3D or location or whatever you want to call it. It is vector 3D, right? Now if we show it in our print string, it will show you X, Y, and Z. And if we hit W on our keyboard, it will change the first value, that is X, right? Hit W, you can see X is 1, Y is 0, and Z is 0 as well, okay? It will give us 3 values. So if we release the W, it won't print anything. You can see the X is 1, Y is 0, Z is 0. So now we know what is the difference between all of these value type. If we put digital boolean in here, it will give us an action value of type of boolean. If we change this value type to access 1D, it will give us a float. And if we change it to vector 2D, it will give us X and Y. It will give us vector 2D, right? And because we want to have moving forward, backward, left and right, so we need vector 2D, right? We need to know if we should go forward, backward, left or right. We put the value type to access 2D. Now let's just save it. And you know that it will give us a vector 2D. We can right click on it and split the strike pin, so it will give us X and Y, okay? Now, if we go to our context in here, if we hit W at default, it will put 1 in the X, right? Now, let's just again bring back these to a strike pin so we can show it clearly. Now, if we go to our IMC in here, you can see when we hit W at default, it will put 1 in the first input, that is X, right? So whenever we hit W, X should be 1. Let's just add another one. For example, S. Whenever we hit S, if we leave it as it is, if we hit W or if we hit S, in both cases, X will be 1. Let us see. Save everything and play. If I hit W, it changed X to 1. Okay? And if I hit S again, it put 1 in the X. We don't want that. Whenever we hit S on our keyboard, we want to put -1 in the X, for example, right? How we can do that? We can go to modifiers and add a modifier in here, right? And there are some modifier in here that we can use, and we can create our modifier ourselves. Don't worry about that, because there is a lot of them in here that can help us a lot. Right now, what I want to do, whenever we hit S, we want to put -1 in the X, right? So we can negate that to -1, okay? So no, whenever we hit W, it will put 1 in the X, and whenever we hit S on our keyboard, it will negate that 1 to -1 and put it on the X. So let's just save that and run our game now. If I hit W, it will give us 1 for the X. But if we hit S on our keyboard, it will give us -1 in the X. Just look at that, -1 in the X, because we did negate that value, right? So no, I don't want to use X for going forward and backward. You know that whenever we hit W, we want to go forward, and whenever we hit S, we want to go backward, okay? So we don't need to put the W and S values in the X. We want to put it in the Y, right? So you know that we have X and Y in here, and we want to put this WS value in the Y, not in the X. How we can do that? We can again use modifiers. So for example, let's just delete this modifier. I will do it again. Whenever we hit W, we want to put 1 in Y, right? Not X. How we can do that? We can use modifier. Let's just add a modifier, and in this modifier, I want to use swizzle input access value. And what this will do, if we expand it, you can see we can tell it where to put its value. And at default, it is in the Y, okay? The first one, Y. If I want to put it on Z, I can put it on Z in here. If I want to put it on X, again, I can do it like this. But if I put it on Y, X, Z, it will put the W when it is pressed, it will put 1 in the Y, the first parameter in here, right? So no, let's just do that for S as well. Add a modifier of type of swizzle, okay? And in here again, I need it to be YXZ, so it will put 1 in the Y first parameter in here, this Y, whenever it is pressed. So no, let's just save this. Whenever we hit W or S, it will put 1 in the Y now. You can see if I hit S again, you can see it put 1 in the Y. No, we want 1 in the Y whenever we hit W, and we want -1 in the Y when we hit S on our keyboard. How we can do that? We can add another modifier in here, like this. We can have multiple modifier in each action mapping in here, right? So in here, I want to negate it for the S. So let's just save everything. No, if we had play in here, if we had W in here, it will put 1 in the Y. And if we had S on our keyboard, it will put -1 in the Y. You get that? It is so easy to do it. Now let's just do it for D and A, going right and going left. How we can do that? We can add another one in here, and this time I want to use D. And whenever we hit D, I want X to be 1. And let's just add another one. Whenever we hit A on our keyboard, I want -1 in the X. So how we can do that? We can add another modifier in here and negate that value. So it will give us -1. So let's just save this. And now if we go to our game, if we hit D on our keyboard, it will give us 1 in the X. And if we hit A on our keyboard, it will give us -1 in the X. And we have W. Whenever we hit W, it will give us 1 in the Y. And whenever we hit S on our keyboard, it will give us -1 in the Y, right? So with that, we can just delete this. We know how it works. We can right click on it and split the struct pin. Now we know what this value will give us, right? Now with that, whenever this IA move triggered either with W, S, A, D, we can add movement, right? Add movement input. So with that, first of all, I want to go forward. How we can do that? First of all, it needs a direction. So I can use, for example, our camera and get forward vector off of that camera, for example, and put it on the word direction. And a scale value, we know that we want to go forward. Whenever we hit W, we want to go forward. And whenever we hit W, the Y will be 1. So we can put it there, right? Now with that, if we compile and run our game, whenever we hit W, you can see we go forward. Whenever we hit S on our keyboard, it will go backward. And we can do that for going left and right. We can add another movement in here, add movement input. And this time, again, let's just use camera. And in here, we want to get right vector, okay? And give it the direction. And we can use this X. Why we want to use X? Because whenever we hit D on our keyboard, it will give us 1 in the X. And whenever we hit A on our keyboard, it will give us -1 in the X. So just with that, if we compile and run our game, WS is working for forward, backward, but if we hit D on our keyboard, it go right. And if we hit A on our keyboard, it will go to the left. Now you can see it is a lot cleaner to do it like this than older way to do it. Let's just create another one for jumping. So right click in here again, go to input, and in here create another input action, and this one I want to call it jump, right? I'll click on it to open it, and the jump is just a boolean, right? So leave it just as that and go to IMC, and in here add another mapping, and this time choose jump. And whenever we hit space on our keyboard, we can jump, right? That's it. We can just go to here and in here search for jump, right? And in this jump, whenever it is pressed, we can jump, right? Jump easy. So let's just compile and run. If we hit space on our keyboard, you can see it is jumping, and we can go backward, forward, and all of that, and we can jump as well. So that's how easy you can use enhance input action. So that was it, guys, for this video. I hope you like it. Please, 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 if you want to help me and you like this video, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. It's my honor to have you here. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much for watching. Bye.